that particular work, dude, have at it, whatever makes you happy. The bonus in the RBE system is no matter what you choose to do, whether you want to be a flute player, an artist, an engineer, a chef, even though the chef and the wait staff and stuff like that, what if you're a social person that likes to be a waiter? You just like, I like interacting with the people, I like talking to them, taking their orders. You get personal satisfaction out of that. Could a robot do it? Yes, but I like to do it too.
There's a market for human interaction in
Yes,
restaurants.
and socialization. And so the difference is the person who works in today's system as just a waiter is not living in a 5,000 square foot home or living in a 2,000 square foot reasonable home for, or it depends on if they have a family, but you know what I'm saying. Their quality of life isn't stellar.
But who defines that? Who are you to define their quality of life? What if they're perfectly happy living in a small 1,000 square foot home, they have a child, it's better than the condition that their family had here? And I believe that it's liberty and freedom that will allow this. And a lot of people say, well, the current system, if we had a free market capitalist system, people would hurt, people would struggle. And the hope is eliminating and removing barriers, which I see primarily coming from the state, but also corporations that act on their own outside of the state. They are exploitive. It's more voluntary. The state takes away the voluntarism. What if their condition was better than the generation before? And
right.
Here we have a continual generations and generations are slowly getting out to where now they're going to college, now they have more access, now the whole family has lifted itself up, but still compared, the 1,000 square foot place compared to what it was
right.
when they were growing up.
Each individual does determine their own happy quality of life. I know people who are perfectly content with living in the middle of the woods in a log cabin with an axe and just that's it. That's all they want. And they want to be disconnected from everything. Cool. That's totally fine. That's up to them. But in today's system, the person living in the 1,000 square foot home, how many of them, and this would be a statistical analysis, a valuable study that should be done, that could be done. Although some of it's intuitive if you just look at how people, if you just run along the lines of people you know or whatnot. They have a lot of debt. They're living in this small place. They might not like that place, but it works for them at the moment. Would they like something better? Would they like a more energy efficient fridge? Would they like a nicer television for entertainment for the family? Would they like to be able to go out more often with the family to go to the park, go to the zoo, do things, but they can't afford it? So quality of life is not necessarily just where you live. I pick that as an example. Not everybody wants a 2,000 square foot home. And definitely most people don't need a 10,000 square foot home. That's kind of, that gets into the American bigger, faster, larger, more materialism stuff that we've kind of associated with wealth and importance and self.
That's not wealth.
Right, that's not wealth. Wealth, to me, and it should be intuitive to most people, wealth is accessibility. Am I wealthy enough that I have access to adequate medical care when my child needs it, adequate transportation to go where I want, when I want, in a sustainable manner? Whether that's a really amazing public transportation system to where you walk out of your house, a robotic car picks you up, takes you to the train station, and whoosh, you're in Dallas in an hour and a half on a maglev train, visiting the cousin's house. That is just as effective, in fact more effective, than hopping into your car, fighting through traffic, polluting the atmosphere in your gas guzzler, and taking 9 hours to get there. So they're different, but the accessibility mixed with the technological development and capability is what the resource-based economy is striving towards. And so one's personal quality of life, there are some basics that apply to all human beings. Food, shelter, water, clothing, communication, transportation, things like that. The ability to get, move, and live at a comfortable level.
Do you believe these people have a right to those things you just said?
Yeah, they're born human. They deserve to live. Given today's technological advancements, yes.
Do they have a right to travel or a right to public transportation and effective technological travel?
They have the right to travel as they see fit, as technology allows them to. So they should, if they know people on the other side of the planet and they want to go visit, they should be able to go do that. There's no reason why we can't, because there's no negative ramification to holding them back from it. The only negative ramification, well, there isn't really one, because when you're using clean green energy systems, solar, wind power, et cetera, there's no ecological negative ramification to them doing that. In today's world, if everybody drove around gas cars, we'd be Venus in a heartbeat. We'd have a runaway greenhouse effect like you wouldn't believe, because that would be way too much pollution being thrown up at once if every 6 billion people...
Carbon monoxide, not carbon dioxide, right?
Right. And so But there's a lot of other pollutants as well involved with that. But if you did it for all 6 billion people using today's systems, you're going to run into a problem. Whether people believe in global warming or not is irrelevant.
Sure.
It's just if you're doing it on that scale, well, you've tipped it.
There might be a reason why that's not happening. A natural balancing.
Well, yeah, because of the way. But when you look at technological systems that are clean and don't do that, could you facilitate 6 billion people? Yes.
If there weren't restraints, and I see those restraints coming from the state. But I did have I went and revisited the addendum last night, and I've probably seen it about 2 or 3 times before that. Great flick. Saw the original one a lot. Love all the false flag talk on that one. Those are my roots. I'm trying to bring it back to the roots.
Mine too.
Okay, so I came up with 3 critiques of the Venus Project, the resource-based economy. 3 Austrian critiques from the Austrian school, from Ludwig von Mises, Murray Rothbard.
I've had debates with Austrian economic people before.
Right on, great. Okay, so the first would be, in the film, he totally tarnishes the use of a monetary system. We agree about the debt-based money, the Federal Reserve, central banking, fractional reserve banking. That's not the free market. That's unnatural. They're only able to do that because they're backing it up with the force of government and a monopoly, right?
And a gun.
And you started off your discussion, it's important to know that government is force and violence. Gun is what the end result. Even if it's like a petty, you didn't get a permit for selling raw milk at the farmer's market, which is illegal in the state of Texas. There's a bill to change that. But then it's like you got to ask permission to sell raw milk. What's that all about? And then they give you a ticket and you don't go to court because you think it's ridiculous. It will end up with them coming to your home with the gun. And it's important to note. But you started off by discussing direct exchange earlier when you were given an introduction, meaning I have tomatoes, you have a lawnmower, you want my tomatoes, but what you have to trade is a lawnmower at this particular point. We can't make any business. But if you use your lawnmower to fulfill Tyson's demand for the lawn being mowed, because he doesn't want to dirty up his nice suit here. And then we came up with a medium which naturally arises because it's the most practical, it's tradable, and this is what Murray Rothbard and the Austrians refer to as indirect exchange. Direct exchange would be tomato for lawnmower.
That's why you have the money by proxy to cover those indirect.
Yes. And so are you against the use of indirect mediums like shells early on or cigarettes in prison? Not that we would.
Right. No. I think they were all relevant at the time. I think we are now beyond that time.
Okay.
That's the only difference. It's funny that some people and the Austrian form of economics thinks that money is absolutely necessary in a sense, as if we've always had it. When if you go back in time, no, we didn't. It was invented at some point, which means we did exist without it.
Sure.
And then we developed as a means to facilitate our growth as a species. Who's to say we haven't now gotten to a point where we don't need it again? Okay. That we are now advanced to another level.
Okay. My second critique would be, and so you respond, we don't need it now if we can go through the abundance technology.
Right, because
if scarcity, you don't need to have this price.
Right.
Because money comes with the price, a value that you can all come to an agreement on based on supply and demand.
And if I can use automation to make billions of tomatoes, then there's no need to trade tomatoes anymore. So if I can apply that to everything else along the line, then that's where it washes out.
Okay, so the second critique would bring in Ludwig von Mises's opposition to socialism, and I know that y'all's system isn't necessarily Marxism, however there are some overlap, and that was his argument against the impracticability of socialist economic calculation, in that when you have a medium of indirect exchange that you can place a monetary value on, which comes to, is brought to fruition through the price based on market and demand, supply and demand, which again goes back to the individual who is the most apt and capable of deciding what he thinks would better his condition at that time.
Right.
And I would argue not a technocrat or a technician, or a central planner. So without this means of determining the best way, and I think there might be a necessity in order to operate in an industrialized or an advanced civilization, in order to distribute or in order to send signals to the producers, to the technicians, to the automated factories that are producing things, it would be difficult in order to most effectively and efficiently manage the distribution of resources, goods, or services without a medium of communicating how much particular good or service is in demand at the time. So absent that price system, I feel potentially, even if you think that there's these altruistic technicians that would be able to centrally plan that thing with the use of massive supercomputers, I think it would end up just as the Soviet Union ended up, as Mises predicted, more than 50 years earlier, in a collapse, famine, the inability to fulfill that inherent demand in the individual.
Okay. And that would apply if you're using humans to make decisions for other humans in your idea of central planning and whatnot. But what about when the individual who is making that personal choice has the ability to create on demand, as I mentioned earlier? So now your means of production is not derived by somebody's assumption of what we think would be adequate. How many resources do we need to say we have a city of 1 million people? You can do a survey. Let's kind of put ourselves in a world for a moment, a hypothesis. Every home that everybody lives in has a computer system that runs through the integrated, of the city. There's a city brain, I guess you could say. It doesn't control people. All it does, it's an information gathering system. And so a question, today we're going to do an annual survey. How many tomatoes do you eat in your household? Different, kind of like a census, but a census of stuff. How much stuff do you really need? So that then the system can say, okay, this is how many resources we need based on the demand of the individuals. So you as a person are saying, I have a chair, I don't need a chair next year, or I might need a replacement because it's kind of starting to fall apart. And you can break things down that way. You don't need to do it all at once, but every once in a while, every couple of days, you're just asked a different question. And over the course of that year, that allows the system to know through algorithms, here's how many people we have, here's how much stuff they need or don't need. Here's what they want or don't want. So now we can directly manage, this is how many resources would be required, plus a percentage over, because there's always an overfill. You want to account for tolerances. We do that in engineering all the time, plus or minus a percentage. In this particular case, it'd always be a plus so that you cover any visitors, outbases, anything like that. And so now we get to the point of if somebody wants something, it's a make on demand, and we know we have the resources available based on trend analysis. It was this much last year, it was this much the year before that, it's this much now. We can use proper mathematics. They do it in economics now with monetary stuff. There's no reason they can't do it with direct
They don't do it successfully now, hence the current economic crisis.
Yeah, though let me say they did do it better. I think when money was a little more rooted in something real. If
gold.
Gold or something like that. If you go back, several centuries, the initial ideas followed a proper trend analysis line. And science and engineering does it all the time, and that's relatively accurate. Then you can still run your social system, you can do your resource allocation in a proper way, but instead of assuming what somebody is going to want or need, you ask them. And now they have the technical capability in their own home to just, or via their phone or whatever, just say, dude, yeah, no, I don't need that. Yeah, I'm going to need that and that. The things that will never change is you always want a boatload of food, a boatload of energy. There are some things that you always want an abundance of. But when it comes to individual product creation, chairs, things like that, people like this model but don't like that model, that's where you get into print on demand or build on demand so that people can get exactly what they want. Hell, they could even design their own stuff. You can get somebody to say, well, I like that chair, but let me hop into my CAD program. I want it a little wider, a little taller. I don't like those legs, but I want those legs. Can you please make me that? You want to talk about the height of personal choice and personal freedom is to quite literally be able to customize whatever you want, send it to the system, and the factories will be like, okay, and spit it out.
Okay, before I get to the third one, where do the resources, I subscribe a lot to the very fundamentals of the Lockean, John Locke theory of property, that the individual that takes something out of the state of nature, resources out of the state of nature, and puts them to productive use, he has ownership rights over them and then can engage in direct exchange or indirect exchange, exchange that for something that we can all commonly trade on. The resources, say for example, we do have this